Support Name Explain on Patreon for ad-free videos, exclusive podcasts and blog posts, and to help choose what names get explained. Click the link in the description. Rayman 3 Hoodlum Havoc, This Is Going Somewhere I Promise, is a video game I remember playing as a kid when it first came out in 2003 on the PlayStation 2. Though oddly enough, the lasting memory it has made on me has nothing to do with the actual gameplay, or characters, or story, or even the graphics. Instead, it relates to one of the first things you see in this game, that being the language selection screen. This is a kind of silly game and the language screen reflects this, with the fact that the languages you can choose to play the game in are represented by pairs of pants on a washing line, which have the design of world flags on them. I distinctly remember the pants used to represent the English language bore the stars and stripes of the flag of the United States of America. As a tea-swigging Brit, this image of a pair of American pants representing the language of my nation has just stayed with me ever since. Languages and flags do have things in common. Both are often a defining feature of a nation and are used to represent that country in a multitude of ways. However, the key difference between flags and languages can be encapsulated in a single word: exclusivity. The flags of nations are exclusive and unique to each country. I mean, sure, some look similar, like the flags of Chad and Romania being just slightly different colours, or sometimes symbols appear in multiple flags, like how the moon and crescent appear in the flags of Turkey and Pakistan, to name just two. And yes, sometimes the entire flag of one nation appears within the flag of another nation, like how the flag of the UK appears within the flags of Australia and New Zealand. You had your chance, Kiwis, but you're stuck with us. While there are undoubtedly similarities in repetition between country flags, no two are exactly the same. Languages, however, are not as exclusive as flags though. Because of the history and events that have taken course over the history of our planet, languages from one part of the world have become widely spoken in other parts of the world, sometimes overtaking what they were initially in regards to the amount of speakers. This all comes back to our Rayman pants. See, I did tell you they would be relevant. To me, as a British kid at that time living in the United Kingdom, I did not feel that the flag to represent the English language should be the flag of the United States of America. I am sure, however, little kids playing Rayman 3 in 2003 across the pond in the United States of America felt the opposite way about this and were more than happy with the US panther representing their language. Or most likely they didn't even think about it. I was a weird kid, clearly. English is far from the only instance of a flag and language not always seeing eye to eye, and there are many more we will cover in this video. And it's not only on the language select screen of 2000's 3D platformers where this issue arises, however. Yeah, I'm probably going to stop talking about Rayman 3 Hoodlum Havoc now, but you should go check it out. It's a fun game. You will find flags representing languages all over the place, on the language select panel for websites, on the front of language learning books, and perhaps most noticeably that awful green owl who never leaves me alone with his app uses flags to represent languages. Across various mediums, you will see different flags representing different languages, though despite how commonplace it is, the whole concept is actually pretty dumb. There's a few ideas as to why flags have become so commonly used to represent languages. They are eye-catching, easily recognizable, and on the surface level it does make some sense. Of course, the French flag should represent the French language, right? However, just because something looks appealing and makes sense on a very basic level does not mean you should just go for it. As you start to dive into this philosophy, the whole concept starts to crumble in on itself. It seems that there are two main factors in regards to which flags are used to represent which languages. Those two factors being the flag of where the language is widely believed to originated from, or the flag of the nation with the largest amount of speakers of that language. Both of these ideas make some sense, but both ideas also have issues, which we can see by looking into a variety of languages. Take Spanish an example. The language of Spanish of course originates in the nation of Spain, so it makes sense to use the flag of Spain when representing the language of Spanish. However, the Spanish language has reached far and wide and now lives way beyond the borders of Spain. Most noticeably, the language is widespread across the Americas. Thanks to Spanish colonization in the Americas, Spain is now only the fourth largest Spanish-speaking country. Ahead of it are Argentina, Colombia, and Mexico. According to the website Statistia, Spain has a population of around 44 million. Mexico, however, has a population of around 125 million. million. There are double the amount of Spanish speakers in Mexico than in Spain. Does that mean that the Mexican flag should be used to represent the language? Though the really ironic thing in all this is that the website telling me this information, Statistia as mentioned, uses the flag of Spain to represent the language. Anyway, what about the language that started me down this path? English. This once again boils down to where the language originated from and where it is most widely spoken. Of course, English is from England, part of the United Kingdom, though where it is most widely spoken is in the United States of America. However, this is more than just a two-horse race in regards to flags to represent English, as while the UK has its own flag, the Union Jack, England within the UK has its own flag too, the red cross on a white background. If you were to argue that the flag of the USA should not represent the language, then should it be the flag of the UK or the flag of just English? The English flag points more specifically to the language, but I imagine the Union Jack is far more recognisable. However, the Union Jack also represents Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland, who all have their own languages. Yet you probably wouldn't see the Union Jack being used to represent the Welsh language, an example. And even beyond this point, as well as the USA having more English speakers than the UK, 3 other countries do too. Yeah, the UK is just the 5th largest English speaking language. The Philippines, Nigeria and India sit between the UK and USA in regards to the amount of English speakers. Should their flags represent the language? And even if we do serve the USA flag, that disregards other well-known English speaking nations too, like Canada, Australia, Ireland, South Africa and New Zealand. Though like I said, you Kiwis, you had your chance. The French language feels like it should be less debated. However, this one isn't as cut and dry as it might seem at first. French is of course from France, and while other countries speak French like Canada and Haiti, they don't seem to have more French speakers than France. However, the Democratic Republic of the Congo has French as its official language and has a population of around 90 million, compared to France's 68 million. Does this mean we should be using the flag of the DRC to represent the French language? Well, it seems that while it's the official language, around only 50% of the population actually speak it, with the others speaking other languages. This means that in reality, the DRC has only around 42 million French speakers. Still a huge amount of French speakers, but it doesn't beat France. However, there are many other French-speaking countries in Africa, including the likes of Togo, the Ivory Coast and Madagascar, to name a few. Collectively, there are way more French speakers in Africa than France. It could be argued that the red, black and green of the Pan-African flag would be a better fit to represent the French language than the tricolour, if we're going by amount of speakers in a place. Another really interesting one is the Arabic language. Arabic doesn't originate from one specific country, but rather the Arabian Peninsula as a whole. I suppose you could argue its homeland is Saudi Arabia, so its flag could be used to represent the language as it's the largest and most populated country on the peninsula. But even so, the language really predates the notion of those nations on the peninsula. Some even argue that the word Arabic comes from roots meaning things like nomad and nomadic, which really cements the idea that this language doesn't have one definitive homeland. And the language has stretched far beyond the Arabian Peninsula, specifically into North Africa. Today, Egypt is the largest Arabic-speaking country. Should the Egyptian flag be used to represent the language then? There are other issues in regards to using flags to represent languages too. In the same way one country does not represent a language, quite often one language does not represent a country. Take the Hindi language for example. In many cases, this language is represented by the flag of India. This does make sense as Hindi is the most spoken language in the country. However, India has so many other state level languages like Bengali, Urdu, Sanskrit, Tamil, Assamese and Gujarati. There's people living in India who don't speak a word of Hindi, yet their flag is being used to represent a language they don't even understand. Another issue is with the varieties of languages spoken across the globe. In example, the Portuguese spoken in Portugal is different to the Portuguese spoken in Brazil. So when a list of languages represents Portuguese with just one of these flags, who knows what version you're getting or if you're able to understand it completely. All of these issues can boil down to the simple idea that they can cause upset in a variety of ways. This could be more apparent in some cases than others. Take Taiwan an example. Its status as an independent independent country is debated, and China still insists that it's part of its own nation. The official language of the land is Standard Chinese, aka Mandarin, which is the official language of China too, so using either the Chinese flag or Taiwanese flag to represent this language could seriously upset the other side. Suffice to say, using flags to represent languages creates all kinds of issues, yet so many places do it. And not only they do it, they don't even seem to pick one side or the other. Duolingo, an example, uses the flag of Spain for Spanish, where it originated from, but the flags of the USA and Brazil for Portuguese and English respectively, where they are most spoken. Arabic is a really interesting case on Duolingo. Instead of using one country flag, they use the flag of the Arab League, an organisation made up of the majority of Arabic-speaking nations. Though from an old forum post I found on the Duolingo website, it seems they once used the flag of Egypt instead, which as mentioned is the largest Arabic speaking population on the planet. So what could we actually do to deal with this issue? Well, there's a handful of interesting ideas. We could all simply agree upon which flag represents which language via some sort of UN-led team or something. Or we could create entirely new flags or symbols to represent just languages that are not tied to specific nations. These ideas, however, require some sort of global agreement on creating them, implementing them, and educating the world on them, which probably isn't too high on anyone's priorities list. Another solution I've seen to this problem is with the use of split flags, e.g. English is represented by a small image that's half the US flag and half the UK flag. This makes some sense, but is kind of ugly, less easier to immediately recognize than just one flag, and still excludes a huge myriad of nations who speak the language. We could also simply be more thoughtful and create multiple versions of the same thing that go out to different countries, e.g. the version of Duolingo on British phones could have the British flag to represent English, while American phones have the US flag. Portuguese Duolingo has the Portuguese flag, Brazilian Duolingo has the Brazilian flag, and so on. This solves the issue for native languages, but people aren't really learning their own native languages on Duolingo, are they? This doesn't clear up things for other languages, like does Spanish use the flag of Spain or Mexico on British Duolingo, in example. These are all valid ideas, with their own pros and cons. However, there is one really simple solution to all of this. Don't use flags to represent languages. This is an idea that's picked up a ton of momentum, with there being various articles about the idea online. There's even a great blog called Flags Are Not Languages, which pretty much inspired this entire video. Go check it out, they have some really interesting articles on there on the subject. It seems that the general consensus is that instead of using a flag, just use the language's name. Specifically use the native name for these languages. So on an English language website, don't have the language selection be English, French, Spanish, German, etc., but instead have it be English, Francais, Español, Castellano, Deutsch, and so on. This can also be used in conjunction with a simple pictogram like a speech bubble to easily represent that this is where their language selection is. This is a really simple change and doesn't include any flags. Of course, the other solution to this problem is to simply not care about it. I imagine not everyone is quite as obsessed with languages and flags as much as myself. There are probably millions of Brazilians, oh that's fun to say, clicking on the Portuguese flag right now to indicate their language preference and not even batting an eyelid. But from what I can gather, there are a lot of people like me who do care deeply about this subject, so hopefully the whole world will too. And this is a much debated subject, that's for sure. And I'm not saying that any of these ideas are completely right, they're just that, ideas. This has been my take on this debate, but what about you guys? Which flag do you think should represent which language? As for myself, however, well, I think the use of flags to represent languages is pretty darn dumb. Now excuse me, Glowbox needs some help. Thank you to all my patrons who support Name Explain on a monthly basis. Patreon is vital to Name Explain, and donating just $2 a month allows you to enjoy ad-free videos and bonus Patreon exclusive content. It also allows you to help choose what names get explained in upcoming videos, and gets your name here with all these awesome people. Thank you so much for all the support you guys give Name Explain. Thank you so much for reaching the end of the video. Check out another video and subscribe to stay in the loop on all things Name Explain. Don't forget to follow me on Instagram where I'm Name Explain YT, and also join the Facebook group Friends of Name Explain, both of which will be linked down below. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video, and once again, thank you all so much.